Picture the most ordinary guy you can imagine. Jeong-gyeom Kim got out of the military barely 2 months ago, and now he spends his shift walking the aisles of an enormous PAX fulfillment warehouse, clipboard in hand, a service robot rolling beside him. He is completely unremarkable, right up until the moment the world outside stops singing. The building shakes. Doors slam. Something screams beyond the walls, and when he finally steps into the open air, the sky is burning orange and the city is a field of wreckage. Then a hulking, tusked orc turns toward him, and this exhausted warehouse worker has nothing at all standing between himself and a mouth full of teeth. And that is something inside him wakes up. A message declares him master of a parallel dimension, a space no living thing, no object, not even raw energy can enter unless he personally allows it. On top of that, everything stored in that warehouse can be launched out at will. The apocalypse just met the wrong delivery. Rewind about 2 months. Jeong-gyeom finishes his military service and steps back into civilian life, and the relief lasts roughly a minute before the news arrives. The family is moving to Ujeonbu, a bigger and better place, and they have already lined up a spot for him near his school. His sister is texting him about her gym, so he takes a job at the PAX Fulfillment Center, an enormous multi-level facility packed floor to ceiling with consumer goods. It is the kind of work that turns a person into a walking clipboard, ordinary and forgettable. He is deep in the racks when a creak echoes down the aisle and a door slams shut behind him. Alarms ring. The floor rumbles. His phone lights up with something he cannot process, and the ordinary noise of a working warehouse twists into something else entirely. He climbs, he moves, and he tries to find out what is happening, but one fact stays brutally clear. He still has no idea what struck the world outside. When he finally makes it outside, the world does not make sense anymore. Buildings are collapsed into rubble, vehicles are overturned, and the sky glows a sick shade of orange over a skyline that no longer matches his memory. He stands there staring at it, unable to say anything except a stunned question nobody is left to answer. He does not get long to process it. Footsteps drag across the debris behind him, and what steps into view is not human. It is massive, muscled and grinning with a mouth full of teeth, the kind of creature that belongs in a game screen instead of a parking lot, and has already noticed him. His hands are trembling, but his mind is working. He tells himself it does not matter what this thing is or where it came from, because none of that changes the simple fact that it can kill him right now. Understanding the monster is a luxury. Surviving the next 10 seconds is the only assignment that counts. The orc closes in roaring, and there is no clever plan and no hidden advantage waiting for him. He is a warehouse worker standing in the open with a creature that outweighs him several times over, and the honest read of that moment is that he should not survive it. He is out of options and out of time. And then light floods everything. A window opens in front of him, and a voice states it plainly: Jeong-gyeom Kim is the master of this parallel dimension. It does not allow entry. No living thing, no object, not even energy may pass inside. In a single sentence, the most ordinary man alive becomes something else entirely. Not a sword, not a fireball, not super strength, but an absolute rule of denial attached to a space that he alone controls. In a world where monsters tear people apart in seconds, the most terrifying thing a man can hold might be the power to simply say no. And he is only getting started. When the shock fades, he opens the space properly and gets a real look at what he owns. The system labels it the PAX Fulfillment Center Level 1, a 5-story facility spanning 300,000 square feet, stocked with essentially every consumer product a person could imagine. He is standing inside a private country-made inventory. The rules come attached. Shipping speed sits around 40 miles per hour. He can send out only one shipment at a time, and the maximum size of anything he ships is roughly 6.5 feet. Written out, those numbers look dull. In a collapsed world, they decide whether lives or dies. Then he finds the section that matters most immediately. PAX Fresh holds vegetables, meat, and ready-to-eat meals. Real food in a city where every store shelf is either buried or picked clean. He says it to himself plainly. At a time like this, food is the single most important factor for survival. He just solved that permanently. Next comes the currency. A mana stone is recovered from the monster, and the system accepts it as fuel, describing it as what keeps the place running. Kill something, collect a stone, feed it into the warehouse, and the warehouse gets better. It is a brutally simple loop, and he understands it faster than most people would. He starts working the practical problem. How do you actually hurt something like that? He refers to himself as a former black beret and decides he can manage it, testing his options with the mindset of a soldier grading equipment. Blades struggle against thick hide, so he starts thinking about weight, momentum, and joints instead. That is when the real discovery lands. The items in the warehouse were created by converting real objects into digital data, which means he can copy something from the physical world, register it, and have the matching products ship out automatically. Anything he can reach becomes permanent stock. The ceiling on this had vanished, and the shipping speed suddenly reads very differently. 40 miles per hour is not a delivery statistic anymore, it is a launch velocity. Every axe, every heavy tool, every solid object on those shelves becomes a projectile waiting for a target. He tests it, watches something come screaming out of nothing, and his expression says he understands. The rule deserves a second look. Nothing enters unless he allows it, but this is not a shield he swings or armor wrapped around his body. It is a condition attached to a separate space. He has not tested it under real pressure yet, so the words are both a promise and a question he cannot afford to misunderstand. But safety is not what he wants. He wants Jeong-gyeom. He spreads out a detailed map of Seoul, traces the distance, and does the math on a city with no working transport, collapsed roads, and monsters roaming between him and his family. On foot it is hopeless. Luckily, he has a much better option available. The warehouse bicycles, specifically a Canontric electric road bicycle, black, 16.5 amp hours, listed at $1,890,000 won, roughly $1,400. In the old world, that was an unreasonable luxury purchase. In this one, it is free, quiet, quick, and does not need a single drop of fuel. So the plan forms. Ride out, use shipments as weapons, collect mana stones, upgrade the system, and cover the distance between this warehouse and his family before anything else finds them first. It is a plan built entirely on an ability he has owned for less than a day. He does not have a better one. And that is the tension driving everything from here. The power is extraordinary, but is brand new, poorly understood, and full of hard limits he has barely tested. Every upgrade costs stones, every stone costs a fight, and every fight is another chance to die somewhere on the road long before he reaches Jeong-gyeom. Out on the road, theory meets reality. He tries using the parallel dimension against orcs and immediately runs into the numbers. A 30-second cooldown between shipments, a maximum range of about 30 feet, and aim that he himself calls horrible. A one-shot weapon that reloads for half a minute is not a weapon, it is a gamble. So he spends stones. The system lets him power up the skill directly, and the cooldown starts dropping down toward 24 seconds and lower. Watching that number fall is watching him become survivable. Every monster he kills funds the upgrade that helps him kill the next one faster. The loop is finally turning in his favor. The aim problem is not solved by talent. He fights, he misses, he ships again. And the system numbers do the heavy lifting as mana stones push his stats upward. Blood sprays across broken pavement. Through all of it, one urgent thought keeps surfacing, that he needs to hurry so he can get his family. Because that is the real goal underneath everything. The warehouse is not a fantasy of power to him, it is a vault. If he can reach the people he loves, he can put them behind a rule that nothing on earth has broken yet. The fastest man alive still would not be moving fast enough for him. Then he hears something that stops him cold. The noise ahead is far too loud to be coming from a single monster. Somewhere in that direction there is a fight or a slaughter, and either way it means people. He is one man with a bicycle and a 30-foot range, and he goes toward it anyway. What he finds is a group of warehouse workers pinned down and screaming for help. One of them shouts a name, Mr. Choi, as the creature closes in. Jeong-gyeom runs the math instantly and hates the answer because he has a tiny knife, a cooldown timer, and no realistic way to fight this thing directly. So he does the only thing that works. He asks himself how to pull the monster's attention away from the man it is about to kill. And then he makes himself the more interesting target. That is the decision that separates people who survive an apocalypse from people who become stories told inside one. The fight is ugly and close. There is a strange moment where the creature does not come at him the way it should, and he spends every second of that hesitation. When it finally goes down, two exhausted, filthy survivors are staring at a coworker they probably looked at twice before today. They bow and thank him for saving their lives. He deflects it, says he is just glad they are both all right. And for the first time since the sky turned orange, he is talking to another human being instead of running from something. Then one of them says a line that changes the picture completely. That survivor awakened an ability too. He is not alone in this. Whatever happened to the world happened to people as well. And some of them came out the other side carrying powers just like his. It answers one question and instantly raises 10 more, starting with how many awakened are out there right now. The group takes him in and he weighs it carefully. He notes that a functioning car would be extremely useful, that these people might carry him closer to his family, and that they are taking a genuine risk by bringing along a stranger. Cooperation is not sentiment for him. It is arithmetic about distance But the night ends on a shadow. As they gather in the dark, a cluster of figures waits out in the ruins and everything gets colder. Jeong-gyeom has just walked out of a monster problem and straight into a people problem. When the world ends, the second kind is usually the one that kills you. Inside their shelter, the explanations start. One survivor believes an orc simply got lost and wandered into their area, the kind of comforting people repeat when the truth is unbearable. Jeong-gyeom listens and nods politely, but the details refuse to line up. Whatever happened here, these men are leaving out something important. He asks that matters most to him. Does this place not get attacked by monsters? The answers are warm and grateful and just a little too smooth. They thank him again for the rescue, admit that nowhere is truly safe now, and offer that might at least be cozier in here than outside. Then comes the detail that reframes everything. Their previous warehouse completely vanished. Gone, erased, and that is exactly why a wyvern came after them in the first place. A building disappearing is not storm damage or an earthquake. It is somebody's ability or something far stranger, and nobody in that room can explain it. The geography is a trap. The tunnel to the west is their only way out, and a group of wyverns has decided to make itself at home inside it. So the survivors have been quietly stockpiling food and water from the warehouse, slowly preparing to move out, waiting for a chance that may never actually arrive. And this is where Jeong-gyeom's instincts sharpen. He thinks they seem like good people, but there is one thing he cannot overlook. They say they saved up supplies from the warehouse, and yet they will not tell him exactly how much. In a starving world, vague numbers are almost never an innocent accident. Meanwhile, his own system keeps growing. A new option unlocks automatic shipping, priced at 10 mana stones, letting him set a chosen item to ship out on whatever time interval he decides. He admits openly that he is not sure what that really does yet. Keep that one in the back of your mind. He also keeps his mouth shut about the true scale of his stock. He has an entire fulfillment center behind a door only he can open, and he is sitting in a room full of people rationing bottled water, revealing that is not generosity. Depending on who is listening, it is a target painted on his. The group decides to move, and someone tells him they have faith he will keep them safe if things get dangerous, exactly the way he did before. It sounds like gratitude. It also sounds like an expectation being quietly installed. In a matter of hours, the man with the ability has become their insurance policy. They roll out toward the tunnel, and he rides the electric bicycle alongside the vehicles, cutting through the air with the ruined road opening ahead. For a few minutes, it almost feels like progress. Then somebody points and says it, there is the tunnel, and the reaction in the car is not relief. It is, because the wyverns are already awake. The narration is blunt about the odds. They cannot outrun this many wyverns, and they certainly cannot kill them using Jeong-gyom's ability. One shipment at a time, limited range at perfect aim against a pack of flying predators that owns the only exit. That math does not. A red-scaled wyvern lunges forward with its jaws wide open, and the chase begins for real. His powers never faced something that can fly, move faster than he reloads, and hunt as part of a swarm. Every lesson he learned while fighting orcs on the ground suddenly feels useless against a predator that owns the sky. So the escape turns into a chase, with a flying predator closing on a group that has nowhere left to go. His improved cooldown, limited range, and massive stockpile are all being measured against something that moves through the air instead of the ground. There is no clean victory waiting here, only a shrinking lead and an open road. The system chimes in the middle of the crisis with best possible news. Cooldown limit reached, current cooldown 5 seconds. He went from one shipment every 30 seconds to one every 5, and suddenly he is not a man with a trick anymore. Tires scream, a wyvern shrieks, and the fight tilts. The survivors watch it happen and cannot process what they are seeing. Someone calls it an unbelievable ability. Someone else says it out loud in disbelief, a warehouse that shoots axes. To them it looks like a miracle. To him it looks like a countdown, because every second spent here is a second away from home. One of them says the quiet part. He envies Jeong-gyeom, because with an ability like that he could reach his own family quickly. That single line reframes the entire group. Every person in these vehicles is carrying the exact same wound, and only one of them has the power to actually fix it. The other awakened survivor explains his own approach, spending mana stones to power up his abilities the same way. So the upgrade system is universal, not personal, which means every awakened human alive is currently in a race to level up on monster corpses. The rules of the new world are slowly becoming visible. Then a man apologizes to him, saying he feels like he only got in the way. Jeong-gyeom brushes it off politely, and the offers start coming. They can drive. They are heading the same direction. They can get him to Indiagwon faster, maybe not as far as Gangnam, but closer than he would manage alone. And here his caution surfaces again. He does not want a crowd. He does not want everyone learning what he can do. And given the situation, he would rather keep his cards face down. Those are not the thoughts of a paranoid man. They are the thoughts of somebody who has already noticed something wrong. Because their leader is the problem. Jeong-gyeom reads him clearly as a dangerous man, the kind who needs watching. The group is grateful, the group is warm, the group keeps thanking him. And underneath all of it sits somebody who understands exactly how valuable a walking supply but really is right now. Then the ask arrives, wrapped in gratitude. They thank him for everything, and then mention that now he is even going so far as to clear the tunnel for them. He tries to interrupt, tries to say, wait, hold on. It is already too late. The favor was announced before he ever agreed to it. Watch the technique, because it is beautifully ugly. They praise him, they remind him he must have saved that food for his own family. They insist he is doing something noble, and by the time he can object, refusing would make him the villain. That is manipulation dressed up as appreciation. And it works. They celebrate. Bottles come out, the leader proposes drinking moderately and going to their families tomorrow, and somebody toasts to a safe trip back home. Everyone is smiling. Jeong-gyeom is sitting in the middle of it doing arithmetic on how much this detour will cost him in hours, in blood, and in distance. His internal reaction is two words: he is screwed. Not because he cannot fight, but because he has been maneuvered into a position where no costs him more than saying yes. In a collapsed world, being the strongest person in the room does not automatically make you the freest one there. So he goes. The sequence closes on Jeong-gyeom standing alone at the mouth of the tunnel in daylight, one man with a bicycle and endless axe supply, and a 5-second cooldown facing a nest of flying predators. He is doing it for people he barely knows, because refusing was never really an option. Before the road opens again, things go quiet inside those vehicles. One of them talks about growing up as an only child and always envying the kids who had brothers or sisters. It is a small, human thing to admit out loud, and it lands directly on Jeong-gyeom, who has siblings he cannot reach. The group's leader is drinking heavily, and it is not a good look. Somebody shouts for a person to take the bottle away from the boss. He is loud, unsteady, and running a convoy of survivors through a landscape full of monsters. The competence gap between him and the man he is using keeps widening. Somebody in the group is named Yongsoo, and late that night the conversation is almost ordinary, asking why Jeong-gyeom is still awake and whether his sleeping spot was uncomfortable. It is the closest thing to normal life he has had since the collapse started. Small talk should not feel rare. Here it absolutely does. Then the supplies come up. Someone points out that yes, he has an entire warehouse, but he keeps loading everyone up with this much food and this many supplies. Jeong-gyeom waves it off and says not to worry about it, because he has plenty in stock. That is the truth. It is also a massive understatement. He is feeding a group of strangers indefinitely without straining his reserves at all. Anyone paying attention would work out that his stock is not a backpack, it is a 5-story fulfillment center. The more generous he is, the more obvious his true value becomes to exactly the wrong kind of person. Outside, the wyverns are not finished. Screeches cut through the dark, wings move across the ruins, and something strikes hard enough to make the air crack. The convoy is being hunted rather than simply chased. There is a difference, and it shows in how patiently these creatures keep circling back to the same road. He hands out gear before things get worse, telling the group he brought them a little something they will definitely find useful. That is the practical version of heroism. No speeches, just equipment appearing exactly when people need it. A man in a truck waves back at him, and for a moment the convoy looks like a team. Then a shape moves in the dark that does not match the others. He notes that it looked different and much bigger. The obvious question follows immediately. Is this the boss of the wyverns, or something the wyverns answer to, a host that the smaller ones belong to? Neither possible answer is The danger keeps climbing on a schedule. First a single orc, then a pack, then wyverns, then a swarm, and now something standing above the swarm. Each new threat arrives right after Jeong-gyeom finds an answer, the last one. His power grows fast, but the world keeps faster than he does. The vehicles push forward and hit a wall of a completely different kind. Wreckage, screeching brakes, and a truck stopped where it should not be. The road is blocked. In a city full of flying predators, being forced to stop moving is the single worst thing that can happen to a group on wheels. He tries to solve it the reasonable way, saying he will take a different route, that there must be another bridge that can carry them across. The sentence never really finishes. Whatever he sees ahead cuts it short, and the expression on his face does more work than any line of dialogue possibly could. And that is where he stands now. A blocked road, a hunted convoy, an oversized creature somewhere behind them, and a family still sitting on the far side of ruined city. Every single thing he has gained so far has bought him time. None of it has yet bought him distance. The chase starts immediately, and it is relentless. Something red and enormous comes down the road behind them, and the group is reduced to a vehicle, a driver, and a man in the back seat improvising weapons out of retail inventory. He asks the driver to reverse the car back to a specific point ahead. He is thinking tactically, not desperately. He works out that the creature does not follow its target all the way to the end like a homing missile, which means its attacks can be baited and evaded once you understand the pattern. That is a soldier's observation. It is also the only reason they surf. Then the hard limit shows up again. The cooldown is maxed out at 2.5 seconds, and even that is not fast enough because these things easily outpace his ability to kill them with axes. He has multiplied his rate of fire and it still is not enough. That is a genuinely frightening beat. So he escalates the payload. If an axe will not do it, he ships something with real mass, and a refrigerator comes screaming out of the portal at 40 miles per hour. Somebody in the car shouts the obvious that he thought this guy could only throw axes. The rules just got a lot wider. Then comes one of the best small reveals of the entire arc. He can recall objects he has already deployed. Someone notices the axes and appliances disappearing off the road, and he explains it plainly. He pulled them back so nobody steps on them, and so the car does not pick up a flat tire. Recall changes everything for a fighter like him. His ammunition is not consumable. Every axe he throws can be pulled back, every heavy object can be redeployed, and the road behind them gets cleared in an instant. He is not simply launching things. He is launching them with perfect resource recovery built in. They break away and escape by vehicle, and the adrenaline finally drains out of him. Someone in the car looks over and asks whether he really plans to go see his family looking like that, covered in blood and filth. And it is also a kindness, and it lands surprisingly hard, because that is when the exhaustion catches up. He has been fighting, riding, shipping, calculating, and refusing to stop since the sky changed color. He is injured. He has not slept. The driver tells him to hold on tight, promises they will get there in 20, and everything starts going soft at the edges. Someone says his name. He manages one confused syllable in response, and then he is gone, unconscious in a moving vehicle, surrounded people whose leader he does not trust, with a warehouse full of everything they could possibly want sitting behind a door that only he is able to unlock. Change how every future fight fought. That leaves him badly exposed. His entire power runs on his own permission, and he has just handed his unconscious body to a group he was suspicious of an hour earlier. Whether the warehouse still protects a sleeping man is a question nobody answers while he lies there in the back seat. The collapse also lands emotionally. This is a man who's been running on one motivation since the first page, reaching his family, and his body has finally voted against him. He does not get to choose when he stops. That is what an apocalypse actually does to people, ability or no ability. And when he goes under, he goes straight into memory. Because before he was the master of a parallel dimension, before the orcs and the wyverns and the mana stones, he was somebody's son, somebody's little brother, and a kid who had to be talked into his very first fight. The memory comes back in quiet pieces. An older neighborhood, aging buildings that all look alike, and a thought about how it does not matter how determined a man is if the worst has already happened. There is a fear sitting underneath everything he does, and here it finally gets said out loud. He admits it to himself. Otherwise he would keep putting off opening the door, afraid of even the smallest chance of facing the worst kind of reality. That is the real weight he has been carrying this whole time, not the monsters. The possibility that he crosses an entire ruined city and finds nothing left. A small girl calls out for her father. A woman is crying. A door opens because somebody could not stand not knowing anymore. The scene is fragmentary and emotional, and its function is clear enough. Everyone in this world is searching for someone, and almost none of them have a warehouse to help them. Then the memories turn warmer. A younger family member named Jeong-gyeom appears, and the ordinary texture of his life fills in around her. The noise, the teasing, the small injuries, a kid howling that something hurts while somebody else asks how that could possibly have been hard. Nothing remarkable. That is the whole value of it. Among the memories sits a framed portrait of an elderly man presented without a name or explanation. Jeong-gyeom does not stop to identify him. The image simply belongs to the household he remembers, a family with years of life behind it and an ordinary past that feels impossibly distant while he crosses the ruins. Then comes the boxing thread. Some tells him the school should have a boxing club and that he ought to join, predicting he will do pretty well. Someone else calls him pathetic and announces that starting tomorrow he is joining them for morning exercise. His toughness was not natural. His family assigned it, and it worked. There is a moment in the ring, a big right hook, a crowd reaction, somebody noting that he took the punch. He learned how to get hit and keep standing years before any of it mattered. Every fight he has survived since the sky broke traces directly back to that gym. His family kept pushing him forward. There is a laptop, a screen, someone telling him it looks like his time has come, and a group calling out that they are rooting for him. That is what he is crossing a ruined city to reach. They believed in him first, and he intends to repay it, which is exactly why the present situation is unbearable. He has an ability that could protect them completely, a warehouse that could feed them for years, and a defensive rule nothing has broken yet, and none of it counts until he is physically standing in front of them. Power without proximity is nothing. It also answers something that has been nagging since the first orc. Why does an ordinary logistics worker keep making good decisions under pressure? Because he was raised by people who trained him to take a hit, because he served in the military, and because he has spent his life being told to stand back up. Then the memory ends and reality returns hard. He wakes into a moment he cannot account for and admits it directly. He does not remember anything after that. The collapse in the car erased a chunk of time. He has no idea whatsoever what happened while he was lying there unconscious. That is a genuinely unsettling place to leave a man whose power is built on permission. He was carried, moved, and handled by other people during a blackout he cannot reconstruct. He wakes up somewhere unfamiliar. And the first thing he has to determine is whether the people around him are still the same ones. He surfaces in an unfamiliar room and asks how long he was out. The answer is not too long, maybe 3 hours. That is 3 hours of total vulnerability in a world where already killing each other over canned food. And somehow he is fine. Somebody watched over him instead of robbing him. Then comes something he has not had since the world ended, a meal. There is a table, home-cooked food, kids eating noisily, and Jeong beside them. He thanks the woman who made it, genuinely floored that this still exists at all. Ordinary domestic life has become the rarest luxury left on Earth. Someone tells him flatly that he literally saved their life. He shrugs it off. Notice the pattern, because every time Jeong-gyeom gets thanked he deflects, and every time he deflects somebody trusts him a little more. He's building a reputation without trying to, and reputations are dangerous currency in a world like this. Business follows breakfast. Someone confirms he needs to get to Gangnam, and he says yes for now because Gangnam is only a waypoint on a much longer line toward Ujeongbu. There is a careful conversation about handing over a bike, an offer made gently and a reminder that it is far too dangerous out there. Then a man makes him an extraordinary offer. He wants to come along all the way to Ujeongbu and stay with him until Jeong-gyeom has met every last member of his family. Not to the next town, not until it becomes inconvenient, all the way until that reunion actually happens in front of him. It is an enormous commitment from people who owe him nothing beyond a rescue, and somebody in the room says it is a little much. But the reasoning stays simple, that it is nice when people can help each other, along with an admission of not being sure how much help will actually amount to. This offer changes the shape of the journey. Until now, every around him has wanted something, and the leader near the tunnel treated his kindness like a resource to exploit. Here someone volunteers to cross the ruined city for a promise that benefits only Jeong-gyeom. For once, help arrives without a hidden demand attached. Meanwhile, the system keeps expanding. A notification announces that additional abilities and upgradable properties are now available, and he decides to check it later. which is the most relatable thing he has done all arc. There is a menu of new power sitting in his head and a car key catching the light. Then Pax itself shows up. A small robot assistant appears, cheerful and boxy, and he is told that if he needs anything he can simply call Pax, exactly like that. It offers to answer questions. His warehouse now has staff, which raises a very uncomfortable question about what the parallel dimension actually is. And the questions keep stacking up. Where does all that inventory truly come from? Why does the space present itself as a retail operation complete with staff and pricing? And who wrote the rule that nothing on Earth enters without his permission? Nobody has answered a single one of those questions yet. Then it is time to leave. Sunglasses go on, somebody announces they are heading out, and the mood is almost light. A kid asks Yoo-jung to play the princess game. Someone says thank you. And for one page, this looks like people go on a trip instead of marching through the end of the world. And that comfort is the part that should worry you. He has food, a companion, a working vehicle, and a system unlocking fresh abilities, and for the first time everything is going his way. Nothing in this ruined country has stayed that way for long, and the open road is waiting for him. The new options arrive, and they are enormous. For 50 mana stones he can install the Parallel Dimension Laboratory, a facility that can combine, disassemble, and modify any product registered inside his space. His warehouse stops being a store and starts being a factory. He reacts exactly like you would a lab in here. Alongside it, simultaneous shipping increases to 2. That sounds minor. It is not. It means 2 objects launching at once, 2 angles of attack, 2 problems solved in the very same instant. Every upgrade so far has been about removing a bottleneck, and this one permanently doubles the output of his entire arsenal. He also tests the boundaries, because of course he does. He attempts to store the Earth itself inside the parallel dimension. The system responds that the attempt failed because the target exceeds the criteria of what can be stored. He laughs it off. But that message quietly implies about that failed attempt says more than it seems to. The system did not call it impossible. It said the target exceeds the criteria of what can be stored. Criteria can rise. Whatever ceiling exists on this ability is written as a number somewhere, not as a hard law of physics. Back in the real world, they plan a route together over a map, working out which big road to take and where to turn. Somebody in the car notices how suddenly determined the mood has become and asks about it. The answer is obvious to us. Every kilometer traced on that map is a kilometer closer to home. The road choice is reasoned rather than reckless. It may not be the smoothest route, but there are no monsters and no strange people in the way, which in this world qualifies as a highway. Then the conversation turns to whether the army is still out there, and somebody remembers a military base nearby. That question, whether the army still exists, is the one everything now hangs on. A functioning military would mean order, safety, and somewhere to hand off responsibility. So they steer toward the base carrying something dangerously close to hope. In this ruined country, hope has been a reliable warning sign, so armed men in uniform step out of cover. For 1 second it looks like the system still works, like somebody is still in charge here. Then one of them says it. Wrong answer, it is ours now. The uniforms are stolen, the rifles are real, and Jeong-gyeom just walked into an entirely human trap. They take him. Someone says he will take this kid. Another answers yes sir, and a blow puts him down hard. He cries out, and none of the power that makes him extraordinary does anything for him here. Whatever the parallel dimension protects, it did not stop the blow that put him on the ground. Inside their holding area, he finds someone in far worse condition. A man has been beaten badly, and the gang's leader explains that the guy is not dead yet, that he was kept alive because he seemed to know a lot, and that he was already in bad shape, probably from being starved far too long. The leader also fumbles a detail, admitting he was exempt from enlisting, so he is not sure about the name of the unit involved. It is a small line carrying real weight. These men are wearing the authority of soldiers without any of the training, discipline, or obligation that is supposed to come with it. Then the order comes down. The leader wants Jeong-gyeom to go to the warehouse with some of his men and bring back food. The irony is almost painful. They have captured the one alive who could feed every person in this camp forever, and they are sending him out on an errand. Everything goes wrong for the gang almost immediately. Something enormous arrives, men start shouting, and the group that was posturing with rifles a minute ago scatters and runs for their lives. Somebody screams at everyone to run, somebody else spits out a curse about cowards, and the armed hierarchy collapses in about 4 seconds. In the middle of that chaos, a notification appears. An outsider is attempting to enter the parallel dimension, and it asks whether to allow entry of Jeong-gyeom. That is the first name the beaten man has been given, and the first time anyone besides Jeong-gyeom has ever pushed against his space. Jeong-gyeom hesitates for a reason worth understanding. He warns himself that if he ends up storing something out of desperation, it could turn out to be dangerous. His ability is not a party trick to him, it is a locked door, and he has been extremely careful about what he lets through it. He allows it anyway and pulls the man to safety. Jeong-gyeom is in terrible condition. Jeong-gyeom concludes he was tortured by those gang members, that he is not doing well at all, and that he is likely suffering from malnutrition. The plan is simple and human. Give him something to eat when he wakes. And this is the quiet thing that makes him different. In a world where everyone is starving, the man with unlimited food is to spend it on a stranger who cannot possibly pay him back. He has already been manipulated once for exactly this kind of generosity. He does it anyway. That is who he is. Then the system does something new. There is a building he has been standing in, and he checks a suspicion he has been carrying. Sector 2 gets stored as a type of warehouse, folded into his space alongside the original fulfillment center. He is no longer just carrying inventory. He is collecting real estate. But there is a catch, and it is an important one. The items in that new building are not infinite the way the ones in the fulfillment warehouse are. System stock replenishes. Captured stock does not. So they will have to be conservative in how they use anything that came out of the real world. That single rule rebalances everything. Anything the system generates is effectively endless. Anything he takes out of the real world is finite. Ammunition, medicine, fuel, equipment. All of it now has to be rationed carefully. The most powerful man in the ruins still has to sit down and keep a ledger. He also stays guarded about people, and he says so honestly. It is not that he distrusts Young-soo and his family, but he does not know anything about the soldier yet, and he cannot afford to be careless. He has already been burned once by a smiling group with a very dangerous leader. He rides out on the bicycle and notes something almost funny, that this is one of the best places to be during an apocalypse. A fully stocked facility, a defensive space nothing can enter, and unlimited food. On paper, he has already won. In practice, there is a monster standing between him and the exit. He also wishes the big one would simply wander off on its own, which is the most honest thought he has all night. Nobody actually wants this fight. But somebody points out that these monsters are conveniently offering themselves up as target practice, and avoidance quietly turns in something closer to experimentation, because that is what this creature becomes. A test target. He has 2 simultaneous shipments, a cooldown measured in seconds, and a stockpile containing everything a modern country produces. The one thing he does not have is data on what actually works. And the enormous shape looming out of the dark is about to provide it. The plan starts conventional. If the thing shows up, they bombard it with bullets, and that is exactly what happens. Automatic fire tearing across the dark. It should be more than enough. It is not even close. Rounds land and nothing meaningful happens, and the creature keeps advancing like the gunfire is just weather. Then Jeong-gyeom notices the detail that matters. It does not feel like tough hide deflecting those rounds. It feels like the attacks are being blocked by something else entirely. Some invisible layer sitting between the bullets and the body. That is not armor. That is a barrier, and a barrier is a completely different problem. They escalate to grenades. Someone hurls one, then another, and the exhaustion sets in fast, with an honest admission that he did not know it was this hard to keep throwing grenades. The explosions land, the monster barely has a scratch on it. Somebody asks what kind of ridiculous creature they are even dealing with. So Jeong-gyeom starts engineering instead of fighting. If dozens of grenades combined are not enough, he needs something with far greater explosive force. But a bomb that powerful carries a massive blast radius, and they are standing right next to it. He needs enormous power inside a small explosion. That is a design problem. And he happens to own a laboratory. He checks his total 189 mana stones and moves. Combine ignores physical incompatibilities and merges two or more objects together. Disassemble takes apart an object made of different materials by type. A third option sits there locked. He has a full workshop inside. Combine unlocks more than it sounds like. Ignoring physical incompatibility means the ordinary rules of chemistry and construction stop applying to him. He can fuse things that should never fuse into shapes that should not exist. Every item in a 300,000 square foot warehouse just became a component instead of a product. His companion offers a practical compromise during the drives, suggesting that if Jeong-gyeom is that worried, he could simply leave the portal open while the driving happens. It is a small moment about trust. The man who guards his space obsessively is being asked to leave the door propped open for someone else's safety. He also mentions there is one more thing he wants to upgrade, and then he disappears to work. Everything tightens at once. A monster in pursuit, a road choked with obstacles, and a man quietly assembling a weapon out of retail stock inside a space that nothing else can reach. When he comes back, he apologizes for keeping everyone waiting, which is a spectacular understatement. He walked into a laboratory and walked out with something purpose-built for one creature. Not long ago, his hardest decision was which shelf a particular package belonged on, and now he is designing ordnance out of ordinary inventory. There is also a human obstacle. Cars are stacked and jammed across the road, and he notes that he does not know who put them there, but all of them are blocking the way. Somebody deliberately barricaded this route. That detail is not decoration. It means organized people are operating somewhere nearby. Then the weapon goes off. Fire, debris, and vehicles thrown through the air, an explosion contained enough to survive and violent enough to matter. This is the first time his ability stops being a delivery system and turns into ordnance, and that difference will define everything he does from here on out. And underneath the spectacle, the rules never bend. Everything he did came from mechanics already spelled out. Shipping recall combines simultaneous shipments and mana stone upgrades. Nothing gets invented in the moment to rescue him. He wins because he understands his own system better than anything currently trying to kill him. In the aftermath, the barrier question comes back. Somebody asks whether the barrier broke, noting that it stood strong until now and cannot understand how it fell so easily. That is a critical shift. The barrier was never only the monsters. There is a barrier protecting people too, and has just failed. Then he remembers something worth holding on to. His oldest sister Juyeon is 8 years older than him, and when he was 7 she started taking her academics seriously, announcing she was going to study hard from then on. There is a book and a child saying she wants to be treating sick people. A sister who studied medicine is not a small detail in a country overflowing with injured survivors. Where she probably ended up, and what she is probably doing right now, becomes obvious the moment you hear it. And only a few beats later, he is standing in a hospital looking straight at her. He reunites with Juyeon. After the crossed city, the wyverns, the gang, and the collapse, one member of his family is standing in front of him alive. She introduces herself as Jeong-gyeom's oldest sister. Young-soo introduces himself with a bow. Everything his blood for since the sky changed colors came true once. And the reunion is exactly as unsentimental as siblings actually are. She sighs that she should have beaten him up when he was young the way somebody else used to. Another man offers him bread, mentioning his own wife baked it, and suggests he eat while everything gets explained. Ordinary family friction in the middle of an apocalypse. Then Jian asks about Dayo-han, and the answer is grim. He was physically beaten and tortured, and he was not looking good at all when they found him. She wants to be taken to him immediately, and Jeong-gyeom explains that he is somewhere that can only be entered through his own ability. Juyeon lays out the real crisis. There are more than 300 people gathered in this hospital, and among them are patients who need constant observation and regular care. That is not a survivor camp. That is a functioning medical facility running on nothing in a city where the supply chain no longer exists at all. And suddenly Jeong-gyeom's ability has a purpose beyond his own family. 300 people, endless food supplies, and a laboratory that can modify anything registered inside it. The man who spent this entire arc trying to get home has just found the one place where his warehouse could save hundreds of lives. Then the poison problem surfaces. Awakened people have been poisoned, and that sits at the center of this crisis. Somebody in that room believes another level or two might be enough to cure the poison, which tells you the hospital is not only treating patients. It is racing to grow an ability fast to matter. Someone asks the question that shifts the whole tone. They cannot be stronger than you, can they? That single line tells you this is no longer about monsters at all. There are hostile awakened humans involved, and the people inside this hospital are nervously measuring strength against strength before anyone has thrown a punch. The barrier gets restored, confirmed with a simple answer, and for a moment the hospital is safe again. But safe is temporary, and everybody in the room understands that. A barrier is only a delay. Somebody eventually has to walk out the door and deal with the source of the problem directly. Jeong-gyeom decides the person who walks out and handles it is him. The confidence around that decision is not empty bravado either. He has 300,000 square feet of inventory behind a door, a laboratory that can rebuild what he owns, and a rule that keeps everything outside from reaching him inside it. The opposition finally has a shape, and it is depressingly familiar. A rival group led by Dr. Jin is hoarding supplies, calculating that once the hospital survivors run out of food, they will come begging. They are not planning an attack. They are planning a slow starvation, followed by a negotiation from a position of ownership. The hospital side runs the numbers. A military van only holds so much, so how much food could they possibly have? And yet they somehow have more than everyone else, enough to need a truck to load all of it. Control the food and you can people. That is the oldest play there is. Then Jeong-gyeom answers the entire strategy with one sentence. He can provide an unlimited amount of food to the people, and as for the poisoned people with abilities, he can simply overpower them. Dr. Jin's greatest asset is leverage. Jeong-gyeom's existence deletes leverage. That is what makes him so dangerous to a man like that. Someone starts to say that makes it easy and then stops because there is an exception. One person on the other side has an ability that is genuinely that dangerous. There is always one variable that refuses to fit the plan, and this one is about to walk up and introduce itself. It arrives as a bowling ball. An awakened called the Extreme Curveball Maestro launches one, and a price tag flashes up beside it, which is a strange thing to read in the middle of a life or death fight. A curving, guided projectile is exactly the sort of attack that beats an ordinary defense. But it does not beat his. The parallel dimension is impregnable against outside attacks, so when that projectile comes in, it simply does not get through. The rule he was handed on the first still holds. No living thing, no object, not even energy enters without permission, and a bowling ball is very much an object. He is using the space as a weapon now, not a hiding place. It opens and closes on his command, and he says plainly that it bought him enough time and space to pile something up. Defense buys him preparation. Preparation becomes the attack. That is how he handles everything from here. There is also a serious complication to manage. If Yongsu gets poisoned, it complicates everything, so Jeong-gyeom's priority becomes reaching the poison doctor and finding a way to cure it. He is not fighting to win a duel here. He is fighting to remove a condition that is affecting hundreds of people at once. Then comes the reversal, and it is beautifully quiet. Someone realizes their head does not hurt anymore. Somebody else cannot understand how this could possibly have happened. And Jeong-gyeom delivers the line that ends the confrontation before it properly begins. He remembers everything, and he has been ahead of them the whole time. Because the control was never permanent. A notification confirms that a link to a puppet has been lost, which means Dr. Jin's power operates through connections that can be severed. Break the link and the person comes back. The enemy's entire army is borrowed, and Jeong-gyeom has just proved it can be taken away. Dr. Jin loses control of the situation completely. His leverage was food, and food is now infinite. His weapon was poisoned, awakened, and those links are breaking. His most dangerous asset was blocked by a rule he cannot argue with. Every pillar of his plan collapses in almost the same sequence he built it. And he did not outmuscle anybody. He outprepared them. Unlimited supply, an impregnable space, a laboratory, and the patience to let an opponent commit first before answering. From here on, nobody looking at Jeong-gyeom sees a lucky survivor with a strange power. They see something they cannot afford to stand near. In the aftermath, he does something small that reveals how deeply he has thought about his own ability. There are people with mobility issues, and he explains that they do not need to enter the parallel dimension completely. Just a finger or any part of the body is enough for the rule to apply. That is a far bigger rule than it sounds. Protection does not require full entry. A hand, a fingertip contact of any kind, and the denial covers them. His ability stops being a shelter people have to climb into and becomes something he can extend to anyone within reach, without moving them at all. Someone thanks him sincerely for saving them, their mother and everyone else in the building, and then asks awkwardly whether he would consider staying behind. It is a request that acknowledges its own selfishness even while it is being made, and it puts Jeong-gyeom between hundreds of strangers and the family he has been chasing. He cannot stay, and the person apologizes immediately for asking such a selfish question. Gyeohan bows and tells him he sincerely hopes he meets his whole family soon. That is the difference between this group and the tunnel group. Nobody here is trying to trap him inside a cage built out of gratitude. Then the practical planning starts. They are in Gangnam, and the route toward Uijeongbu is the problem. Roads are blocked, the terrain is hostile, and it looks close to impossible to get through on land. They are staring at a map of a city that no longer functions, trying to find a line through it. There is a lighter moment as well, an offhand thought that a certain person could probably manhandle monsters without needing any ability at all. The humor lasts about as long as it takes to say it, because the man he dragged out of that gang camp is about to explain exactly who he really is. The beaten, starving man he rescued from a gang, the one he fed and carried inside his own dimension, stands up and identifies himself properly. He is Lieutenant Colonel Jeong-gyeom of the 50th Signal Battalion, or OKDCC. The prisoner Jeong-gyeom saved out of simple decency is a senior officer of the Korean military. Everything reframes at once. The man who tried to enter his parallel dimension, who was tortured for information precisely because he seemed to know a lot, was never a random soldier. He is a lieutenant colonel out of a signal battalion, which means communications, coordination, and access to information nobody else hears. And he starts talking. The monsters attacked anything in their sight, including people, animals, and even other monsters. The government took measures to fight back and was forced into a decision. because conventional forces alone were never going to be enough against creatures that shrug off sustained automatic gunfire without a scratch. The decision was recruitment. They are actively recruiting awakened fighters to fight against the monsters, calling for able people to join a new kind of force. Every awakened human in the country is now a strategic asset, which makes Jeong-gyeom quietly moving through the city with a warehouse in his pocket extraordinarily valuable. But the state itself is fracturing. There are indications that a signal group is preventing the government from recruiting soldiers, and that the commander of the DCC has joined the coup forces. So the enemy is not only monsters. Part of the military has turned against its own government while the world is ending. And that is where this leaves him. Jeong-gyeom Kim, recently discharged, still trying to reach Ujeongbu, now standing between a coup or recruitment drive, hostile awakened, and creatures that conventional weapons cannot kill, carrying a family reunion in one hand and an impregnable warehouse in the other. The quiet part of his apocalypse